Happy New Year's Eve, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. 2025 has been a wild year for news, and I don't know what's going to happen in 2026, but this year, I think we can all admit, has been rather crazy. Thankfully for you, you guys voted for the top news stories for 2025. I thought it was only fair to allow the viewers to choose and not myself. We have 12 stories, and we are starting off with number 12. Number 12, coming in hot. Nancy Pelosi retires. Let's go ahead and bring it in.
Pelosi says she will not seek re-election. In a video posted on social media, Pelosi's thanking the people of San Francisco and urging them to keep fighting to make the country a better place.
I will not be seeking re-election to Congress. With a grateful heart, I look forward to my final year of service as your proud representative. As we go forward, my message to the city I love is this: San Francisco, know your power. We have made history. We have made progress. We have always led the way. And now we must continue to do so by remaining full participants in our democracy and fighting.
And remember, one of the things I said when we covered this story was that, San Francisco has the largest homeless population in the United States. And of course, Nancy Pelosi isn't going to tell you that, right? Let's go on a little bit more here.
For the American ideals we hold dear.
ABC's Jay O'Brien's on Capitol Hill with more. Jay, why make this announcement now?
Yeah, Diane, Nancy Pelosi saying she won't run for re-election because of, in part, or at least it made today, because it comes after Election Day. Nancy Pelosi was integral in Prop 50 in California. That was that redistricting effort in that state that was successful, redrawing the state's congressional maps to try to get 5 additional Democratic seats. And Nancy Pelosi's office signaled that she would release a decision about what would be next for her after Election Day. And now that this video comes out, it is the turning of a very significant page here on Capitol Hill. Someone who had an iron grip on the Democratic caucus when she was Speaker of the House. Someone who's been in caucus, in Congress since the late 1980s. She was the first female Speaker of the House, known for, as she said in that video there, reminding Democrats time and time again, particularly women in Congress, to know their power, to know their strength, and to know how they can get things done. Nancy
we have to say this here. Nancy Pelosi came from, of course, a father who was also a politician. He was the mayor of Baltimore. He also had ties to the mob as well back then. Nancy Pelosi is encouraging female politicians to know the power that they have, but you don't really have any power because these parties are owned by corporations. They're owned by the donor class. So it's funny that she is saying that, because when there was that pressure to force the vote for Medicare for all, and Nancy Pelosi was the speaker, Nancy Pelosi, of course, was not willing to even move in that direction. And the squad members weren't willing to use the leverage that they had against her to try to fight for healthcare for people in this country. So it's really interesting that's coming from her, of all people. This retirement from Nancy Pelosi was announced right after Zohran Mamdani won the mayor election in New York City. And what I believed at that time, and I still believe, is that she retired because there was a sign. There was a sign that the old guard in the Democratic Party may be on its way out. That win that Zohran had, although I continue to tell people and warn people about this, that I think that Zohran will govern more like a moderate, because he's trying to play both sides. He's trying to work with, the billionaire class. He kept Tish on board, and he's also trying to, work with the progressive, organizers there in New York City as well. And when you put those two together, you're basically going to end up being more like a moderate. So that's what I think is going to happen. But the reality is that she saw the sign on the wall. She saw that this guy who said he's a self-described democratic socialist just beat Andrew Cuomo, who was once governor of New York. And Andrew Cuomo had a lot of billionaire money backing him. And maybe it's time for me to go ahead and head on out. And I think that's why she made that decision. So we don't have to spend too much time on it. But number 12 is Nancy Pelosi retires. Again, you guys voted on these. So again, not my picks, but this is what the audience felt. So I feel like that one fits. I feel like that one, yeah, I was like, that's going to be probably the last one, because I think people felt like it wasn't as important when you compare it to some of the other stories. Let's get to number 11 here, ladies and gentlemen. This was a big one, especially for those who felt as though there was some shift that was happening there within the Republican Party. I still believe there is a shift, but number 11 is Marjorie Taylor Greene resigns. Let's go ahead and bring this in here. I think we all remember this night. It was a breaking news story when I covered it.
I refuse to be a battered wife, hoping it all goes away and gets better. If I am cast aside by the president and the MAGA political machine and replaced by neocons, big pharma, big tech, military-industrial war complex, foreign leaders, and the elite donor class that can never, ever relate to real Americans, then many common Americans have been cast aside and replaced as well.
Marjorie Taylor Greene resigning. This was a big one. I didn't see it coming. I don't think a lot of us in political media saw this coming. And this came after she decided to call out the Trump administration. She decided to collaborate with Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie to push for the release of the Epstein files. She continued to push that she wanted to end the wars and that we should be spending money on people here at home. And Donald Trump went on to call her a traitor. So we know what happened after that. Marjorie Taylor Greene later on said in an interview with 60 Minutes that she had received threats, but also her son had been threatened. So she had family members that were attacked because she went against Donald Trump. And it just goes to show you again, that cabal, that gangsterism, so to speak, of this idea that you can't dare criticize or attack, you know, this mafia boss, Donald Trump. And it's a cult, and it's a problem. It's a problem, right? Yeah, this one was a big one. It was a tough one, I think, for a lot of people who felt like, hey, Marjorie Taylor Greene is at least willing to try to work on a different side of the aisle. She really wants to advocate for people right here in the United States and not spend this money abroad. And this also sort of opened up the political shift in the Republican Party in regards to Israel. She said, no, we should not be sending money to Israel. You know, so of course she got heavily tacked for that as well.
Resigning from office with my last day being January 5th, 2026. And I look forward to seeing many of you again sometime in the future. May God bless you all, and may God bless America.
Breaking news, Marjorie Taylor Greene says she's resigning from Congress, stepping down effective January 5th.
Wow.
She just had this huge fight with Donald Trump. I don't know why in the world she's doing that. The story just broke. She was finally having a positive impact in Congress on the Epstein files, on questioning Israel's funding, on now actually she joined Ro Khanna's bill and others' bill to lower drug prices. She had begun finally to do some amazing work. I don't know why in the world she's resigning. I don't know if it's, you know, look, here are some possibilities right off the top of my head as the story's breaking live. Maybe to run for a bigger seat. That's, I suppose, possible, but there was talks of her running for Senate or for governor, and that didn't come to fruition earlier. I don't know if things have changed. It's not impossible for her to have been bullied out. Maybe they found something on her. I don't know. I think given Marjorie Taylor Greene's temperament, that's less likely, right? And it's possible that she's going to go do media or do something that is related to politics, but not actually in Congress. And
yeah, and I wanted to show the clip from TYT because another thing that Marjorie Taylor Greene did is that she did sign on for this when Ro Khanna was pushing that bill and there was that coalition. I think Cenk had reached out to her and she did sign on for that. So she was trying to work across the aisle. she was willing to do different things, I guess, than her Republican counterparts. Now, I had many criticisms of Marjorie Taylor Greene, and I've never interviewed her on this show. If I were to interview her, I would ask her, like, why were you saying one thing just a year ago and then now change? Like, I would ask these questions, but I can give credit where credit is due, which is that when she felt it was too much, she did go against Donald Trump. Now, she voted along with him most of the time, but at the end of the day, she was willing, excuse me, to call him out. And for Donald Trump and for, of course, the Republican Party, that was a bridge too far. Once she called out Donald Trump, they were like, you have got to get up out of here. Crazy how that works, right? Crazy. So she's gone. We don't know. Maybe she will pursue something in the future politically. I don't know. But given the fact that her family was threatened, maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe she'll go into media or something like that. So like I said, 2025 was a wild year for news. We are moving on to number 10, ladies and gentlemen. And that one, of course, you voted, is the Sean Diddy Combs trial. Let's go ahead and bring it in here.
Efficient to send the kind of message that he wanted to send, that violence against women must be met with real accountability. And so he sentenced Sean Combs to 4 years in prison. That's not as much as federal prosecutors here wanted. They wanted 11 years in prison, reminding the judge that Sean Combs has a penchant for violence and abuse, pointing to 2016 hotel security video showing Combs attacking Cassie Ventura.
It's interesting that they said that the judge wanted to make it clear that violence against women is not okay. Meanwhile, we have a whole cabal of elites that were part of the Epstein files that abused underage girls, but you don't see them going to try to take them down. And that was my criticism during the Diddy trial, was like, okay, they're coming after Diddy, but Diddy is not the head of the snake. You don't see them going after Clive Davis. You don't see them going after all these other people that were entangled with Jeffrey Epstein. So it's just, it's laughable at that point when they say, oh, we got to look out for the women. But I guess if you're, the billionaires and you're an Israeli, agent, they're not going to come after you. So they never come after the head of the snake.
Combs says he knows that video intimately. He apologized to Cassie Ventura. The judge said 11 years was unreasonable, but 4 years is just the right amount. The judge.
We have to pause it here and bring it back out. I'm not going to show that that part on here. But Diddy was sentenced to the 4 years. There was also time that was served. I'm sure you guys remember all of this. So yes, he is still in jail. And who knows everything that Diddy knows about this, or that he's willing to even tell, right?
14 months in credit for time served. The prosecution wanted 11 years. So this is somewhere in the middle. Is this verdict what you expected?
It actually was not what I expected, and this is why I say that. The probation report said anywhere from 70 to 87 months, much higher than the 50 months that the judge gave. And understand, and I'll try to break down the math as best as I can, the judge understands the math of how this all works. With 50 months in the federal system, you only do 85% of that. So you take away about 8 months or so, that's 42 months. And don't forget that Sean Combs has already been sitting in MDC, the jail here in Brooklyn, New York, for 13 months. So you subtract 13 months even from that, you're looking at something like 2 years, maybe 3 years at the end of the day. The judge knew that and still gave this sentence. I think if you're Sean Combs and his defense team, a hard day, but overall a win for them.
Okay.
And of course, Diddy was hoping that Donald Trump would give him a pardon. I don't think that's going to happen. Some interesting things came out during that trial when Cassie's testimony was compelling, I think, for a lot of people. At the same time, me listening to some of that part, I was just kind of like, okay, so she admitted that she wanted to do those things in the beginning, but then, decided not to do those things, etc. Kid Cudi appearing there was Also, like, I think shocking for many people, Kid Cudi said that he believed that Diddy tried to blow up his car or something like that. So there were a lot of things that came out, and whether or not you believe that Diddy was responsible for all of this, whether you believe that, you know, Cassie was a willing participant or whatever, the reality is that Diddy has had a history of abuse for a long time. We've talked about it before on the show. It was well known to those that were around him in the industry. And they went after Diddy and they took him down, right? When Diddy gets out of jail, whenever that happens, he could get released earlier for good behavior or something like that. Diddy's reputation is just ruined at this. He's done. That's pretty much a wrap. Clive Davis isn't. The head of the snake, the top dogs are not. And, you know, we went on to say that allegedly Diddy was basically groomed by Clive Davis. But nobody's going after him. So something to keep in mind there, ladies and gentlemen. That was number 10 there, which is the Sean Diddy trial. Now we are going into number 9, and this one is one that I think really surprised a lot of us in 2025, and that is that MAGA splits over Israel. For the first time in my life, I saw the right split on this issue. Let's go ahead and bring this in, ladies and gents.
Cracks appear to be emerging among the right in what has historically been unwavering support for Israel. On Monday, MAGA stronghold Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene ramping up her criticism, becoming the first congressional Republican to call Israel's actions in Gaza a, quote, genocide. And she's not alone. Earlier this month, conservative influencers like Theo Vaughn and Joe Rogan criticizing Israel's war against Hamas amid Gaza's hunger crisis. Here's Theo Vaughn speaking to TMZ.
We can't show TMZ. Hold on. Because of copyright. I hate this. I hate that. I wish YouTube would just get around that at some point. Then it brings in Steve Bannon here. Let's get into this part.
Quote, Netanyahu's attempt to save himself politically by dragging America deeper into another Middle East war has turned off a large swath of older MAGA diehards.
So the Israel issue with MAGA, I did not see coming for 2025. I could have never imagined that there would be any type of split among MAGA. I felt like they were very much diehard Trump supporters and believe whatever Trump said. But as Israel's genocide in Gaza continued over 2 years, even people on the right, some of them started to say, okay, this is too much. I'm seeing them kill all these kids, etc. They are deliberately attacking them. There's a number of videos where you can see them deliberately attacking children and women and animals, etc. So I never honestly predicted that this split would have happened on the right. So this, I think, was one of the biggest surprises for me for 2025. Joe Rogan and Theo Vaughn, they supported Donald Trump. Joe Rogan went on to offer an official endorsement, and they have been very critical of Donald Trump's administration, even after supporting him. So some people wonder, did it start in the podcast space? Did it start in the, the politician space or whatever? I say it's a combination of both, right? I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene called him out. Steve Bannon was calling out. Steve Bannon still supports Trump, of course, but was calling out all this energy towards Israel and Netanyahu, and said it was too much focus on Israel. The U.S. was paying too much attention to Israel and not issues here at home. And as time went by throughout 2025, we started to see more people started to turn. We know Candace Owens turned earlier on when she was still a part of the Daily Wire in 2024. That led to her firing. Megyn Kelly is starting to shift a little bit. Tucker Carlson turned. There's been a number of people that are prominent figures on the right that are like, nah, we can't rock with this anymore.
Joining us now, staff writer for The Atlantic, Yair Rosenberg, Semaphore White House correspondent Shelby Talcott, and Peter Baker is still with us. Peter, we'll start with you. Given Trump's apparent break with Netanyahu this week, are you seeing this as a sign that the White House may be adjusting its approach or its tactic here, or are we just seeing Trump reacting to optics?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Look, Trump had a very strong relationship with Netanyahu in his first term, particularly the first 3 years. But by the end of his first term, he had begun to sour on Netanyahu for a variety of reasons, particularly after the election of 2020, when Netanyahu congratulated Joe Biden. Trump was very angry about that, has never fully forgiven Netanyahu. So while he's been supportive in his second term, it's not the blank check that he gave in the first term. He has been much more willing to question Netanyahu's approach than he had been last time. That doesn't mean it's a full break. It's different, obviously, than it was, say, with Joe Biden, who grew very frustrated by Netanyahu by the end of his presidency.
Neither of them were really frustrated with Benjamin Netanyahu. This is corporate media for you. Neither of them were really that frustrated. They had already agreed to go along with this. I actually have a deep dive that's going to be coming up that goes all the way back to 1975, I believe, when we talk about when this allegiance started to really take hold, just to go to show you that this didn't just, they were never frustrated. That was a game that was being played by the media. They had already agreed to this, the foreign policy measures, prior to even taking office. And I'm going to get into that deep dive pretty shortly, probably on Sunday's live stream. So yeah, the MAGA split for me, that one was very shocking. Couldn't have predicted that at all. Number 8, ladies and gentlemen, is the 2025 false flags. And the first one that I remember started very early. It was the New Year, 2025 New Year, about the attack that happened on New Year's Eve of 2024 and going into New Year's Day. This was the big one that people were like, what is happening here? So number 8 is the false flags.
We are, of course, following that breaking news out of New Orleans. At least 15 people are dead, more than 30 injured after an Army veteran slams a rental truck into New Year's Eve revelers and what the FBI is calling a terrorist attack. And they do not think he acted alone.
Live picture now from the French Quarter tonight. This is where the search is on for more possible suspects.
Pause here. This is why I want to point something out to you guys. So they didn't think, the FBI didn't think that he acted alone, but they thought that Tyler Robinson acted alone. So pay close attention to that. This was a big one, guys. I think a lot of us caught on to this one very early. Of course, it just happened to be someone who was Muslim. It just happened to be someone that was former military. This is another one of those soldiers that at one point was stationed at Fort Bragg. I've told you guys before about the soldiers at Fort Bragg and whatever seems to happen to some of them there. Later on, there was a New York Post reporter who went through his apartment and the Quran was just wide open. And it was important that you guys informed me that Muslims don't keep the Quran wide open like that. And his apartment looked like it was staged. It was so obvious what they were trying to do to get people to fear Muslims. And it started at the very beginning of this year. These false flags to try to get Americans to fear Muslims so that you support Israel. But you guys were on it because you guys are smart.
That after surveillance video showed 3 men and a woman placing explosive devices in the area.
With that, we welcome you officially to Fox 11 News at 5 o'clock. Simulcast on our sister station, Fox 11 Plus, on this New Year's Day. Happy New Year to you. I'm Marla Tejas.
And I'm Chelsea Edwards. Christine and Alex had the night off. Now here's the...
Yeah, that was New Year's Day. Now we're going to go to the next one. I'm not going to play the whole thing because you guys, I mean, we saw all this. But the next one, another one that I wanted to put up here is, of course, the National Guard shooting. This is also another one of the false flags. Remember this?
That we have been following here. This is the latest on the shooting of 2 National Guard members last week in D.C. The suspect appearing virtually in court Tuesday from the hospital as the surviving guardsman appears to be showing some signs of improvement. I do want to bring in Melanie Alnwick with Fox 5 DC. She has been following all of the latest developments. And Melanie, I understand there are some new photos here that are coming out.
That's right. So, it's 1 week now since that shooting here outside the Farragut West Metro Station in downtown Washington, D.C., just about a block and a half from the White House. People continue to come up from the Metro. They stop by the little memorial that has been growing out here. They pay their respects. What we do understand yesterday in court, yes, during that arraignment, there there were new photos that were released by the government that show the moments before the shooting here at the metro station.
Now, remember what we found out later on about this guy is that he apparently worked with the CIA in Afghanistan. So he was on our side. He was on the USA side, working against his own people. And that information came out later on. Then it was also revealed that there was information that was reported that he was possibly blackmailed into going to DC to shoot National Guards. Now, the young woman passed away. The gentleman was in critical condition. But this was another one that you guys, again, you guys are so intelligent. I have a smart audience. You guys are so intelligent. People, we were all just like, yeah, where did this come from out of nowhere? This guy, he was 15 years old when he was recruited by the CIA. So someone who was indoctrinated very, very early on. And then people wonder, how do these things happen? And of course, last but not least, and I may not have gotten all of them, so sorry, but these are the ones that really stood out. Of course, the Brown University shooting, the suspect who also allegedly killed the MIT professor, Professor Nuno.
Long manhunt for the gunman responsible for a shooting rampage at Brown University is over. Good evening, I'm Mark Brown. The man investigators say they were searching for, taking his own life as officers were closing in to make an arrest. And we're now learning this same man is also believed to have shot and killed a professor at MIT. Eyewitness News reporter Michelle Fisher live in our newsroom now with the breaking new information. Michelle.
Mark, after 2 deadly shootings and an investigation spanning 3 neighboring New England states, tonight in multiple press conferences, we learned new information about the suspect's identity and his connections to Brown University and the MIT professor who was also killed.
Yeah, and one of the things that we learned, well, we were watching that manhunt together that night. But remember, this is the guy that they said allegedly killed the students at Brown University, then went on to kill Professor Nuno. He was in his 40s. He was a Brown University student. Apparently, him and Professor Nuno had some type of relationship, some type of professional relationship years ago. The other thing was that both of these shootings took place in the physics realm. So the Brown University shooting, the 2 students that were killed, that was in the physics building. And then also, of course, Professor Nuno was physics professor at MIT. And I told you guys about my experience working in the physics department at MIT. He later drove to New Hampshire. They cornered him there. And then they said that he, just ended it himself. We may never know the full story about this because he's dead. And that's what's important to note. But all of these false flags that were happening back to back to back, I think it was definitely a telltale for me that, look, what is the possibility that all these things are happening back to back to back to back? And I'm sure I missed some here and there, but it was very clear to me that when we look at the surveillance state, when we look at Peter Thiel's plan, Palantir, the Trump administration, the creation of J.D. Vance, they really do want to increase surveillance. They want to increase a police state. And their way of doing this is going to be by telling the American people that you're going to be much safer if we do this. But ultimately, it'll be used in nefarious ways. A real life Minority Report. If you haven't seen the movie, you need to check that out. And also, of course, to get people to fear Muslims once again, and that way you will support Israel. All these things are connected. And that brings me to number 7. We cannot forget about, of course, the LA wildfires. A lot of people lost their homes, belongings. This was a big one. Let's go back.
Exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah. So we certainly want you to stay safe out there, Jazz.
Yeah, I think it's like a construction. One of these homes under construction, and they had a huge pile of dirt and leaves, and that was beginning to catch fire and blow this direction.
Yeah, and that's just even presents more danger. Wow. I would guess the good thing that you talked about, Jazz, that nobody's there. Mm-hmm. They're all gone.
It's a ghost town. Yep.
I'm glad that guy's getting out of here too.
No question. All right.
That part right there was Pacific Palisades. As we all remember, these fires spread into LA. I also told you guys I want to fast forward a little bit here so you can see some of that footage yourself. I also told you guys, what's going to happen to that land, right? Like developers are going to buy that land. They're going to build what they want. I firmly believe this. I firmly believe, and I've seen this happen myself in real life. I firmly believe that they don't really want people to own anything. People lost their homes. There was one community in particular that was a more middle class, predominantly Black community that had been there for years. Homes gone. So it's very clear to me what happens here, because like I said, the people don't get their homes back. Developers buy that land that's ruined. They build what they want on it. And you went from being a homeowner to a renter. Big one here, folks.
Up these embers and carrying them everywhere, and then all these spot fires erupting. I'd say 30 minutes ago, this part of the hillside wasn't this intense, wasn't burning like this, and it's just the winds are just whipping this fire up so intensely. And the scariest part was driving down PCH, and at some points you couldn't see the road ahead of you because there was so much black smoke, and that smoke is just blowing towards us, blowing towards the ocean. And every once in a while those gusts just really kick up. Like right now, our door, I have to shut our door, it flew open. So again, just a very scary situation here. If you don't.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. And I know some people that live in that area. I had reached out to them at that time to make sure that they were okay. But the wildfires this year were pretty significant. And through this story, we learned about the billionaire couple in California that owns most of the water. And we were pointing fingers as to why the fire department couldn't access the water as quickly as they needed to. No, one couple should not own most of the water. Water is a public utility, and it's insane that that was even allowed to happen. Those people, this is an interesting part, they're also Zionists, by the way. Interesting how that happens, ladies and gentlemen. Interesting how that happens. And that brings us to number 6 here, ladies and gentlemen. Again, your votes, not mine. And that is Zohran Mamdani wins mayor of New York City. Let's go ahead and bring it in.
The sun may have set over our city this evening, but as Eugene Debs once said, I can see the dawn of a better day for humanity. For as long as we can remember, the working people of New York have been told by the wealthy and the well-connected that power does not belong in their hands. Fingers bruised from lifting boxes on the warehouse floor, palms calloused from delivery bike handlebars, knuckles scarred with kitchen burns. These are not hands that have been allowed to hold power. And yet, over the last 12 months, you have dared to reach for something greater. Tonight, against all odds, we have grasped it.
And this was a big story. And I have to say this, this one, it was a weird position for me because, like I said, I'm not going to blame. I totally understand people wanting to vote for someone that's going to help their rent or that's going to try to get them free, like buses. Like, by the way, there are other cities in this country that have free bus. I don't know why people acted like this was a big deal. So I understand it because he ran on an affordability message, and New York is very expensive. I lived in New York. I couldn't afford to live there either. Like, I was like, I got to get the hell up out of here. It's very expensive. And I live in one of these expensive places too. Like, Massachusetts is also expensive. And so I understand that. At the same time, I was cautioning people about his support for Commissioner Tisch, who he did decide to keep, who he said he was going to keep, and he did keep her. I was cautioning people about the meeting that he had with people like billionaire Jamie Dimon, who is the CEO of JP Morgan, meeting with the bankers and those types of things. And so I caution people that I think he's going to govern more like a moderate. And some people didn't like when I said that, but I was just reading the tea leaves, right? But I do understand people supporting someone that is going to make things more affordable for them. And the other alternative was Andrew Cuomo. And Sliwa was there too as well. But when it came to the affordability message, I mean, the reality is like, Andrew Cuomo was like, well, I can figure out this rent thing or whatever. Slee was a Republican, so I knew that he was not going to win New York City. It's just the reality. And to me, I thought it was a slap in the face to people like Andrew Cuomo, who are very, very cocky and very, like, they're just full of themselves and they think that they just have it in the bag. And I think that Andrew Cuomo needed to get this shock. I really do. I despise Andrew Cuomo. And I've gone through that on this show and told you the reasons why. He's insane. Like, I do not like him. And he didn't really bring forward any type of affordability that people were really looking for. He also said some pretty Islamophobic comments as well. So no, I did not like Andrew Cuomo. So I understood this and I wasn't like, I'm not going to go attack people for supporting Zoran because you got Zoran and you got Andrew Cuomo. And Andrew Cuomo is just a sex pest, cocky individual who just felt like this was owed to him. So I totally got that. Now, I don't know what's going to happen. Zoran takes office tomorrow, apparently, 2026. People have to wait and see. But like I said, I think that he's going to govern more like a moderate because I think he's trying to appeal to both sides there. Keeping Commissioner Tisch was a big one. I think he really should have gotten rid of her. Now we are moving on to number 5. And we cannot forget, of course, this one, the fake October ceasefire from Donald Trump, this so-called peace plan that was actually not a peace plan and is just going to be more land theft. Israel is still killing Palestinians today. Let's go into that.
Day after what?
The day after the hostage release, what happens there then?
Well, hopefully you're going to have great success I call it everlasting success. I think you will too. I think you're going to have tremendous success, and Gaza is going to be rebuilt. And you have some very wealthy countries, as you know, over there, and it would take a small fraction of their wealth to do that. But and I think they want to do it. And we're also setting up, as you know, a board of peace. It's called the Board of Peace. I don't know if that's the final name, but the word peace is definitely in there. They have asked me if I chair it. We'll make sure things go well.
And how confident are you that the ceasefire?
So this was the crazy part about this. And I warn people, whenever you hear the phrase rebuilding, that usually does not include the people who already live there. We see that here in the United States with gentrification here, right? So I cautioned people about that. Then I was like, no, they're not going to build it for the Palestinians. They're not going to build it for them. There's a whole Jared Kushner plan. You can Google this yourself. What they envisioned for Gaza. This was decided a long time ago. This didn't happen. They didn't come up with this plan after October 7th. This has been years in the making, and they want to make it a place for their rich buddies. They want a Gaza resort full of hotels and casinos that the rich buddies can all go to, and they'll kill as many Palestinians as they want and expel the rest. That's where Somaliland comes in. So the fake October ceasefire, and I remember people were cheering this on, and I said, no. And Israel's continued the slaughter.
Will hold.
I think it'll hold, yeah. I think it'll hold. They're all tired of the fighting. Don't forget, you had October 7th, which was a horrible day, 1,200 people killed. But Hamas has lost 58,000 people. That's big retribution. That's big.
They've lost way more than 58,000 people. He's keeping that number low intentionally, just like the Biden administration did. Look at RFK Jr. there in the background, just being a cuck as usual. It was so obvious here. Donald Trump said that he thought that the ceasefire would hold. He knew that at the end of the day, Israel was going to do what it wanted to do. And if they broke the ceasefire, he would just basically say, well, I hope that's not what's happening. That's not what I'm hearing from them. I hope that's not happening at all. You know, it's the game that Donald Trump plays that people continue to fall for.
Retribution. People understand that. So, no, I think they're all tired of fighting. And this really gives the whole Middle East. This is beyond Gaza. Gaza is very important, but this is beyond Gaza. This is peace in the Middle East. And it is a beautiful thing. You know, it's a term that you and I have been hearing since we were very young, right? And now we have a chance of really having that. And as you know, most of the countries have passed all these resolutions. Every country is there. Iran came in. I was very happy to see that. I was very honored that Iran came in. They said they support it. Russia came in. President Putin, he supports it fully, very fully. So I was happy to see even countries that weren't necessarily involved in the process, they all support it. I don't know if anybody.
We can only do so much of this. I'm sorry, you guys. It's laughable at this point because, like I said, there's no peace in the Middle East. Donald Trump's a liar, has and always has been. And it's just crazy to me that people still fall for it and still believe it to some extent. That takes us to number 4. Number 4, another big one. You voted for it. Epstein file release. Let's go ahead and bring this in here. Number 4.
And has finally released some of the highly anticipated Epstein files. More than 300,000 pages of documents related to the late convicted sex offender were made public today. They include photos, flight logs, grand jury testimony, and a lot of heavy redactions. Among the photos is this one of pop superstar Michael Jackson with Epstein, and this dinner photo showing Mick Jagger and former President Bill Clinton together.
What they basically did, and we went over this, was that they released the photos that would implicate people that are quote unquote Democrats and removed any photos that would show as much of the Republicans or like Donald Trump, right? So we called that out on the show. They showed pages that were redacted where the entire page was completely black. So obviously a lot of corruption here from the DOJ.
News Nation is digging through the documents. We'll give you the latest breaking news as we find it. But if you think this means it's now case closed, think again. The DOJ was under orders by law to release all the Epstein files by midnight tonight. And even though the DOJ released 300,000 files today, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche said there are at least a few 100,000 more that have still not been released. Blanche says the DOJ needs more time to make redactions to protect victims. He says the rest of the files will be released on a rolling basis over the next few weeks. Some lawmakers say that violates the law that was signed by President Trump 30 days ago. So now some top Democrats, including Senator Chuck Schumer, are threatening serious legal consequences. Let's go right now to News Nation's Joe.
And that brought in the question of impeaching Pam Bondi for not following the orders that were given. And people are talking about that. And then also later on, I mean, we've continued to talk about the Epstein files and more information that has been released. But just recently, I just covered a story about a reporter from the Miami Herald who found out in these files that the Trump administration under his first term was tracking her flights. And she was one of the reporters that was interviewing Epstein victims. So this goes way back. They were tracking this woman, and one of the flights in particular, she never got on that plane, but it makes you wonder what would have happened if she did. So it's just things like that, right? A lot of corruption. One thing I can say about this show, because we're continuing talking about the Epstein files, that has not ended. That will take us into 2026. One thing I can say about this show is that there's a lot of focus on corruption. And while we may not agree on everything, I think that's one thing that all of us can agree with, that we're tired of the corruption. Right. And speaking of corruption, that brings me into number 3. Again, your votes. Number 3, the Trump ICE raids. Let's go ahead and bring it in here.
when it comes to its immigration enforcement efforts. This as Evanston police are said to be actively investigating an incident Friday where 3 U.S. citizens were detained. In a Hyde Park yarn shop today, residents came together not to knit, but to assemble whistle kits, the kind that are being handed out in neighborhoods across the city to alert people when federal agents are in the area.
I think everybody wants to do something, and all of us feel a little bit helpless, and we're all trying to find that little niche or that little way that we could help out.
I've been looking for a way to be a part of the resistance, I guess, and find a way to help, because it's very hard, to watch all the things that are going on.
The event, which drew in folks from across the city, took place just hours before 60 Minutes broadcast this interview with President Donald Trump. In it, he was asked about some of the more violent actions that federal agents have been seen taking against those taking part in that resistance.
Yeah, and I would tell you guys, one channel to watch that covered this extensively is Status Quo. Jordan Sheraton, Zeneb, that team over there, they have covered a lot of these ICE raids in person, whether it was Chicago, whether it was Los Angeles. Like, they had people on the ground extensively covering this. And it brought up this question again about immigration. One of the things that I've said on this show, the U.S., this country never sat down, and this is intentional. They never sat down and said, let's find a way to fix the immigration system in this country. There are people that I have met that have been here for years. They told me it took them 10, 15 years to get their citizenship. That's insane. That's a long damn time. So the immigration process in this country has always been broken. But I feel like that was intentional, and the way that the Trump administration, the way they went after people, the violence of it all, that was to scare people. And I remember sitting back and I saw people cheering that on. And I'm like, why are you cheering it on? And they're like, well, they shouldn't be here and da-da-da-da. Like, okay. But that's why we have due process. This took away due process, the way that they were doing it. There were people on their way or at their immigration hearings, and they were grabbing people there. In some instances, they went after indigenous people. They went after people who were already citizens. The goal, I believe, of the Trump administration is to create chaos. I think they want chaos. Actually, I think the elites want chaos. They want chaos because they can come in and say, we're going to fix all of this by, again, increasing surveillance, ramping up the police state, and you guys will be much, much safer. But of course, like I said, it'll be something more nefarious, and you won't have any privacy. And they'll implement pre-crime, which means that you will be arrested because of what they think you are going to do. Minority Report. And so they want chaos. They'll tell you they don't. They'll tell you they don't want the crime or the violence, but they actually want the chaos because they believe that having that chaos will lead to more control and more obedience down the line. We'll get into this a little bit more in 2026, another deep dive that I'm going to get into.
Have some of these raids gone too far?
No, I think they haven't gone far enough because we've been held back by the judges, by the liberal judges that were put in by Biden and by Obama.
You're okay with those tactics?
Yeah, because you have to get the people out.
Standing up against the president was Evanston's Mayor Daniel Biss.
Yeah, so he went on to say, you got to get the people out, etc. And it's just, again, even Marjorie Taylor Greene criticized it. Even Joe Rogan criticized it. And even Theo Vaughn came forward and criticized the way that it was being done. So it just goes to show you once again, like he always had to take it to that level. I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to do it that way, So the Trump ICE raids was a big one. Coming in at number 2. And I'm surprised. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I was going to say I'm surprised this wasn't number one, but I know what number one is. Number two, again, you guys voted for it. Of course, it is the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Let's go ahead and bring it in.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kira Phillips. We're coming on the air because ABC News has confirmed conservative activist and podcaster Charlie Kirk has been shot during an event at Utah Valley University. The founder of Turning Point USA, a conservative student organization, is known for his outspoken views on politics, culture, religion, often taking his messages to colleges and universities, sparking sometimes pretty heated debates on campus. Let's get right to our chief investigative correspondent, Aaron Katursky. Aaron, what do you know?
Two law enforcement sources confirmed to ABC News, Kira, that Charlie Kirk indeed was shot as he was speaking at an outdoor event at Utah Valley University. You're right, his presence there at the university had divided the campus, according to an article in the school paper, where there were people on both sides debating whether he should even be allowed to bring his message, often loyal to the agenda of President Trump, to campus. But he was speaking at this outdoor event in a courtyard. We've seen some video of that event. A shot rings out. The entire crowd goes scattering. The condition of Charlie Kirk is not immediately clear, but we've seen a tweet from Vice President J.D. Vance saying that he is praying for Charlie Kirk, who he calls a genuinely good guy. And we have also seen a recent tweet from the governor, Spencer Cox of Utah, saying that he's being briefed by law enforcement following the violence directed at Charlie Kirk during his visit to Utah Valley University. The governor's message goes on to say, "We will continue to share updates. Those responsible," the governor goes on to say, "will be held fully accountable."
Now, when I saw this story break on Twitter, it was the video of him. It was the video of Charlie Kirk being shot. And because of the resolution and kind of the angle of the video, I actually responded and said, "Is this real?" I didn't think it was real at first. I thought that was probably an AI video. You know, people do some weird shit on Twitter. And I was like, is this even real? And then I went to look a little bit further and saw that this was real. At that time, it was Charlie Kirk was shot. It wasn't Charlie Kirk was killed. And so I was like, okay, you know, that video is disturbing. And then seeing where he was shot, I was like, I think he's done after that. I came onto this show and I made it very clear to people I did not agree with most of the things that Charlie Kirk said. I didn't like a lot of the rhetoric that Charlie Kirk had. But I also told my audience, don't cheer it on, because this time it's Charlie Kirk. The next time it could be someone that you do like, that you do appreciate. You know, there are many of us in the political podcast space, and a lot of times we do events on the ground, whether it's a political event or whether it's an activist event. There are many of us in this space that do those things. Like you've seen the Gray Zone, like Aaron Mate and Max Blumenthal. They travel, they speak at these events on the ground and other venues. You've seen this as well. Katie Halper does this. Brianna Joy Gray does this. I do this. Like there are many of us that do speak on the ground. My comrade Nick from RBN, he also did this. He went to Seattle to speak at Shama Sawant's campaign rally. So you never know when it's going to be someone that you do like, when it's someone that you do appreciate. And to me, all I could think to myself is, okay, well, I wonder who did this. And I immediately started to see people online blame the left. People saying it was a trans person, it was a radical leftist, when at that time, no suspect had been caught. And it was interesting. And then I saw the FBI just take off and run with that same narrative once they said, oh, the suspect name is Tyler Robinson. So it was almost as if social media planted the narrative out there and the FBI took advantage of that. Now, as we know, they went on to say that Tyler Robinson killed Charlie Kirk. And many of us till this day have disagreed with that. In fact, everyone that I know, whether they're liberal, conservative, whatever, do not agree that this guy killed Charlie Kirk or acted alone. And based on the video evidence that I've seen, I don't see anything that really proves that. And I feel like we've kind of been on this journey since then. Even those of us who were not fond of Charlie Kirk, we've kind of been on this journey of the corruption and the secrets and what are they covering up since then. And many of us have been asking questions because we don't believe the narrative that came from the FBI. I believe that Tyler Robinson was basically a patsy. I do not believe also that he would have acted alone. And then we started to get more information, whether it was from, Candace Owens' text messages that she had with Charlie Kirk. More things started to come out about Charlie Kirk, like moving away from Israel, venting about the Israel donors. And then everything just started to come into place. And that has taken us on a wild ride. And we've started looking more into TPUSA, Erica Kirk, and her lies as well. So take a look back at the moment when they said this was the suspect.
Are pouring over what they call a mountain of evidence against 22-year-old Tyler Robinson, the man authorities say fired that single fatal shot, killing Charlie Kirk. The district attorney saying they hope to file charges by tomorrow, but authorities say they're receiving little help from the suspect who turned himself in Thursday.
He's not cooperating, but all the people around him are cooperating.
Utah's governor saying they have interviewed Robinson's roommate, with whom they say he was romantically involved. Authorities say it was his own father who contacted the Washington County Sheriff's Office after seeing those grainy pictures that were shared with the public.
And you know what else was interesting about this? When they said he turned himself in, now all of a sudden that video footage of him supposedly turning himself in, walking into the police station, is nowhere to be found. So we still have questions to this day. And it was also weird to a lot of us that Turning Point USA didn't seem to want to get to the bottom of this at all. This has led us down a path to look into Erica Kirk's history, her relationship with Intel, her relationship with the Department of Defense, and on and on and on and on. And we've kind of ventured down this rabbit hole, and we're not alone. At the end of the day, what this shows you is that we have a level of corruption in this country like no other, and a Justice Department that doesn't give a damn. We've been fed lies for years. So this is something going into 2026 that people are still going to be discussing. And that brings me to number one. And I agree with you guys on this. The U.S. and Israel strike Iran. Notice I mentioned both of them, not just Israel, because it was both of them. Let's go to that announcement.
Fox News alert, we can confirm Israel is launching a series of preemptive airstrikes against Iran right now. Explosions reported in the capital of Tehran. Trey Yingst is in Jerusalem with the latest. Trey, what can you tell us?
Yeah, Jesse, good evening. Fox News can confirm that the Israeli Air Force is currently striking Iranian nuclear facilities and long-range missile capabilities. This is a significant strike that is expected to take place in a series of waves. According to an IDF official, the opening wave targeted more than a dozen different sites in Iran. Explosions were reported around the capital of Tehran, and as we speak, a state of emergency has been declared across Israel as the Israelis are bracing for possible Iranian retaliation. I want to take you through how we learned about these strikes taking place. At 2:16 a.m. local time, U.S. Ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, tweeted out that there was something going on. He says, at our embassy in Jerusalem and closely following the situation, we will remain here all night. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem.
And we always go back and remember, right, that this was a preemptive strike. So Israel and the U.S., they struck Iran first. That part is always important to remember. And the excuse that they use is they said, well, they're building nuclear capabilities and we can't have that. And this has been a recurring thing. I told you, Israel and the U.S. are the aggressor. And they really had us heading towards something that was very scary. Because we can't beat Iran. Israel can't beat Iran. Iran is huge. And they were willing to risk nuclear war in order to get Iran to fall to its knees and to bully, allow this bullying from Israel. We go here to Donald Trump also confirming it at that point in time.
A short time ago, the U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the 3 key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime, Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. Everybody heard those names for years as they built this horribly destructive enterprise. Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror.
The #1 state sponsor of terror is Israel. It's Israel, obviously, right? But Iran doesn't want to go along with the Greater Israel Project. I'm going to do a deep dive pretty soon. We're either going to do it on New Year's Day for the first live stream of 2026, or we're going to do it on Sunday because I have more information that I need to share with you guys. I'm here to sound the alarm right now. What you see happening with Israel going into countries into Africa, which I warned you would happen, Zionism is going to get a hold of the entire world if it is not stopped. And what I predict is going to happen, any country that does not want to bend the knee to Israel is going to be seen as a threat. And what you see happening in Gaza will become normalized, because that's just the beginning. What Israel has done to the Palestinian people, they can do to any other group of people in the world that doesn't bend the knee. And I'm sounding the alarm right now.
Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier.
And Donald Trump is already talking about possibly striking Iran again with his recent conversation with Benjamin Netanyahu. But this didn't go well for the U.S. or for Israel. Iran did respond. They responded with retaliatory attacks, and Israel was getting pummeled. Yeah, Israel has that Iron Dome, but the damage that Iran was able to do, considering that Israel does have an Iron Dome, really sounded an alarm. And they had to call it off. I don't know what's going to happen in 2026. I don't know what the news is going to be. But 2025 was a crazy year for news, and it's been very chaotic. It seemed like there wasn't a week that went by where we couldn't just chill. There was always something. To the point of sometimes I had to decide, well, I need 5 stories, but there's like 15. I am very proud of the work that we did on this show for 2025. And I think we've done a great job. And going into 2026, we want to continue doing a great job. I have a few projects coming up that I'm pretty excited about. You'll find out about that at some point. But you found this show for a reason. I don't know if someone recommended the show to you, or if I just showed up in the algorithm, or maybe you were just looking for answers. Maybe you have questions, and maybe that's why you're here. Whatever the reason, I think that we have created a community over here with this show where people who have a difference of opinion aren't pushed to the side. We may not always agree on everything, but what I can appreciate about the community that has been built for Sabby Sabs podcast is that we respect different views. Now, we don't tolerate threats and bullying. We don't do that. but we're learning from each other. And that was my goal with this show. So happy New Year's Eve. And I look forward to seeing you guys Thursday night live. And let's keep the ball going. Let's keep talking about corruption. Let's keep diving into things that people aren't really focusing on. Let's keep doing those deep dives. And let's bring forward new projects. I hope that you guys have a great New Year's Eve. And whatever you do tonight, be safe. And I'll see you in the new year. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.